My name is Ellen Thompson. I'm 65 years old and have spent the last 30 years of my life working as a nurse, the last 10 juggling 3 jobs to put my only son Marcus through medical school. Every extra shift, every missed holiday, every aching joint, it was all worth it to see him succeed. Or so I thought, until his graduation day, when he looked his friends in the eye and introduced another woman as his mother. "This is my mom," he said, his arm around a polished stranger, the woman responsible for who I am today. I stood there, invisible, holding the gift I'd sacrificed so much to give him. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt unseen despite your sacrifices, please hit like and subscribe. Because what happened next shocked everyone, especially my son. I always wanted to be a doctor. From the time I was a little girl playing with a toy stethoscope, I dreamed of healing people, of making a real difference in their lives. But life has a way of redirecting our paths, doesn't it? I grew up in a blue-collar family in a small town outside of Pittsburgh. My father worked at the steel mill, and my mother cleaned houses. They were good, hard-working people who emphasized the importance of education, even though they hadn't gotten much themselves. I was the first in my family to go to college. I worked my way through nursing school, studying late into the night after shifts at the local diner. It wasn't medical school, but it was healthcare, and I felt proud putting on that uniform every day. I met James during my first year as a registered nurse. He was a patient recovering from a car accident, handsome, charming, and grateful for my care. We married 6 months later, perhaps too quickly in retrospect. But when you're young and in love, caution rarely factors into your decisions. Marcus was born 3 years later, a beautiful, healthy boy with his father's dark curls and my green eyes. From the moment they placed him in my arms, I knew I would do anything for this child. James was a good father in those early years, coaching Marcus's t-ball team and teaching him to ride a bike. But when Marcus turned 5, everything changed. James complained of headaches one morning before work. By evening, he was gone. A brain aneurysm that no one could have predicted. Just like that, I became a widow and single mother at 35. The first year after James died remains a blur of grief logistics and trying to stay strong for Marcus. James had some life insurance, but not nearly enough to secure our future. I had to make difficult choices quickly. I took on a full-time position at the hospital working night shifts because it paid better, even though it meant less time with Marcus. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, watched him on nights I worked, and I slept when he was at school. When even this wasn't enough to cover our expenses, I added weekend shifts at an urgent care clinic. The schedule was brutal, working nights Monday through Thursday at the hospital, catching a few hours of sleep, then working Saturday and Sunday days at the clinic. But even with this punishing schedule, I made sure Marcus never felt neglected. I helped with homework, attended school functions, and cooked proper meals that I left labeled in the refrigerator when I couldn't be there for dinner. As Marcus grew older, I took on a third job doing medical transcription from home during what should have been my sleep hours. Our apartment was small, but clean and comfortable. We couldn't afford fancy vacations or the latest video games that Marcus's friends had, but we made our own fun. Board game nights, trips to free museums on their monthly community days, picnics in the park. I taught Marcus that experiences and relationships matter more than material possessions. From an early age, Marcus showed an interest in my work. He'd examine my nursing textbooks, fascinated by the diagrams of the human body. When he was 10, I bought him a children's anatomy book for Christmas, and he spent the entire winter break memorizing bone structures and organ systems. By middle school, he was announcing his intention to become a doctor. "You'd make a wonderful doctor, Marcus," I told him. "If that's what you want, we'll find a way to make it happen." And I meant it. I started putting aside a little money each month in a college fund, even when it meant skipping meals or putting off getting new shoes when mine had holes. I researched scholarships and financial aid options obsessively. Every decision I made was filtered through one question: Will this help Marcus achieve his dream? When Marcus was accepted to a prestigious undergraduate program with a strong pre-med track, I couldn't have been prouder. The partial scholarship he received helped, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover all expenses. I refinanced our small apartment to help pay for his housing and tuition. When he called complaining about his outdated laptop, I picked up extra shifts to buy him a new one, despite my arthritis flaring up from the additional hours. Throughout his undergraduate years, we stayed close. We spoke at least once a week, and I sent care packages with homemade cookies and handwritten notes of encouragement during finals. When he came home for breaks, he'd share stories about his classes, his professors, his growing certainty that medicine was his calling. Watching his passion develop made every sacrifice worthwhile. In his senior year, Marcus began applying to medical schools. The application fees alone were staggering, but I never complained. When he was accepted to his top choice school, one of the most prestigious in the country, we both cried tears of joy during our video call. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom," he said, his face glowing with happiness on my screen. "I'm going to make you so proud." "I'm already proud," I told him, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. What I didn't tell him was how I'd increased my hours yet again, taking on the most physically demanding shifts because they paid slightly better. I didn't mention how the pain in my hands had become nearly constant, or how I'd postponed my own medical care when concerning symptoms arose. There would be time to take care of myself later, I reasoned. Marcus's education came first. The night before he left for medical school, we sat at our small kitchen table eating his favorite meal, my homemade lasagna. I'd taken a rare night off to spend with him. "Medical school is going to be challenging in ways you can't even imagine yet," I said. "But I know you can do this, Marcus, and I'll be here supporting you every step of the way." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know, Mom, and someday when I'm a successful doctor, I'm going to take care of you the way you've always taken care of me." I believed him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my son, my heart, the center of my universe for 30 years. I had no reason to doubt his love or gratitude, no reason to suspect that the distance between us was about to grow into an unbridgeable chasm. The change in Marcus didn't happen overnight. Like many significant shifts in relationships, it occurred gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. Looking back now, I can identify the early warning signs, but at the time, I attributed them to the natural stress of medical school. During his first semester, our weekly calls continued, though they grew shorter. Marcus seemed perpetually exhausted, his sentences clipped and distracted. "Medical school is intense, Mom," he'd explain. "There's so much to learn and the professors expect perfection." I understood completely and tried to be supportive without being demanding of his time. When winter break arrived, I was eager to have him home to cook his favorite meals and hear all about his classes in person. But 2 weeks before his scheduled return, he called with news that sent a small pang through my heart. "Mom, I've been invited to spend the break with my classmate Tyler and his family at their lake house. A bunch of us are going to study together, and his parents are hosting a networking event with some top surgeons." His voice held an excitement I hadn't heard in months. "Oh," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity." "It really is," he continued, relief evident in his tone. "Tyler's mom is Vivian Montgomery. Her family practically built the hospital wing where we do our rotations." That was the first time I heard the name that would eventually replace my own in my son's life. When Marcus did finally visit briefly after the new year, I noticed subtle changes. His clothing was different, designer labels I couldn't afford. His speech patterns had shifted, adopting phrases and mannerisms that weren't part of our working-class background. He seemed uncomfortable in our small apartment, his eyes darting around as if seeing the worn furniture and modest decor for the first time. "I've been saving up," I told him proudly over dinner. "Next year, I should be able to send you a bit extra each month for expenses." Marcus looked up from his plate, a strange expression crossing his face. That's not necessary, Mom. I know tuition is covered by your loans, but medical school has all those hidden costs. Books, supplies, professional clothes for your clinical rotations. I'm managing, he said curtly, then changed the subject. Later that week, he was sitting at the kitchen table studying when a car pulled up outside. Marcus quickly gathered his things. That's Tyler picking me up. We're meeting some classmates to review anatomy. I walked him to the door, but he stepped outside, quickly closing it behind him before I could meet his friend. Through the window, I glimpsed an expensive SUV and a young man in a cashmere sweater. I couldn't help but notice how Marcus's body language changed as he approached the vehicle. Shoulders back, chin up, a performance of confidence that seemed foreign to the boy I'd raised. As his first year of medical school progressed, Marcus mentioned Vivian Montgomery with increasing frequency. Vivian says networking is as important as grades in determining residency placements. Vivian introduced me to the chief of cardiology last weekend. Vivian thinks I should focus on specializing in plastic surgery. That's where the real money is. With each reference, I felt a small piece of my influence in my son's life being chipped away. But I told myself this was natural. A young man finding mentors in his chosen field. I should be grateful that someone with connections was taking an interest in my son's career. Still, when Easter approached, and Marcus informed me he would be spending it with Tyler's family at their place in Aspen, I couldn't help but feel the sting of rejection. I was hoping to see you, I admitted. I've been working extra shifts at the clinic, but I arranged to have the holiday off. Sorry, Mom, he replied, not sounding particularly sorry at all. This trip was planned months ago. Vivian's invited some important people in neurosurgery that I need to meet. I swallowed my disappointment and sent him money instead. Money I couldn't afford to part with, pulled from my dwindling retirement account. For new ski clothes, I wrote in the card. Have a wonderful time. He never acknowledged receiving it. During his second year, our communication dwindled further. Weeks would pass without a call, and my texts often went unanswered for days. When we did speak, Marcus was vague about his life, deflecting personal questions while peppering the conversation with references to Vivian's connections and guidance. I began sending larger portions of my paychecks to Marcus, believing his silence might be related to financial stress. For unexpected expenses, I'd write on the transfers, hoping to ease any burden he might be feeling. In April of that year, I decided to surprise Marcus during finals week. I hadn't seen him in nearly 6 months, and despite working 3 jobs, I managed to arrange for 2 days off. I packed a cooler with homemade meals, his favorites that could be easily reheated in a microwave, and took the 4-hour bus ride to his university. I texted when I arrived, "Surprise, I'm outside your building with food to fuel your study sessions." 20 minutes later, Marcus emerged, clearly flustered. "Mom, what are you doing here? I'm in the middle of finals." "I know, sweetie. That's why I brought food, so you don't have to worry about cooking." He glanced nervously over his shoulder at the building entrance. "You should have called first." "I wanted to surprise you." I lifted the cooler. "Everything's labeled with reheating instructions." Before he could respond, a small group of students exited the building, including a young man I recognized as Tyler from photos Marcus had shared. Beside him was an elegant woman in her 50s, expensively dressed with perfectly styled blonde hair. Marcus stiffened. "I have to go back in. I'll take that." He reached for the cooler, clearly hoping to end our interaction quickly. But the woman had already noticed us. "Marcus, darling, aren't you going to introduce us?" Her voice carried the polished tones of wealth and privilege. Marcus's face paled slightly. Vivian, this is Ellen." "Ellen, this is Vivian Montgomery, Tyler's mother." "Not my mother, Ellen, just Ellen." As if I were an acquaintance, a distant family friend. The omission cut deeper than any knife. Vivian gave me a quick assessing look, taking in my bus-rumpled clothes and weathered hands. "How nice. Are you one of the hospital volunteers?" Before I could correct her, Marcus jumped in. "Ellen was just dropping something off. We were finishing up." I stood there speechless with hurt as my son effectively dismissed me. Vivian smiled thinly and guided the students back inside Marcus, following without a backward glance my cooler of carefully prepared food forgotten on the sidewalk. I picked it up and walked to the bus station in a daze, tears blurring my vision. On the long ride home, a painful memory surfaced standing outside Marcus's building. I'd overheard him tell someone on his phone, "No, it's fine. She's just the cleaning lady or something. I'll be there in 5 minutes." He had been talking about me. Despite this growing evidence of Marcus's shame regarding our relationship, I continued supporting him financially and emotionally. I told myself he was under tremendous pressure, that medical school was changing him temporarily, not permanently. I worked harder, slept less, ignored the increasing pain in my joints, and the concerning fatigue that no amount of rest seemed to alleviate. Each time I transferred money to Marcus's account, money for books, for professional attire, for special stethoscopes, and medical equipment, I imagined it as an investment in our future relationship. Surely, once he graduated, once the pressure was off, my real son would return to me. The son who once held my hand during thunderstorms because he knew I was afraid, who made me handmade cards for every birthday, who told me I was his hero. I clung to this hope through years 3 and 4 of his medical education, even as the evidence mounted that Marcus was methodically erasing me from his narrative. He no longer visited at all. His social media showed holidays spent with the Montgomerys' weekends at their vacation homes, attending galas and charity events, where he stood smiling beside Vivian, looking every inch the successful doctor in training with his society mother. I was working a double shift at the hospital when Marcus called to discuss graduation details. It was the first time he'd initiated contact in months, and my heart leapt with hope. "The ceremony is on May 15th, he said. "They're assigning seating by graduate. You'll be in Section E." "I'll be there," I promised. "I've already requested the time off, 3 whole days so we can celebrate properly." A pause. "About that, there's a pretty packed schedule of events. The department dinner, the dean's reception. I'm not sure how much time." "That's fine," I assured him quickly. "Whatever time you can spare. I'm just so proud of you, Marcus." Another pause. "Right. Well, I should go. Vivian's arranged a meeting with the chief resident at Massachusetts General." He hung up before I could respond. Still, as graduation approached, I allowed myself to hope. This milestone might be the reset our relationship needed. Once Marcus was Dr. Thompson, perhaps he could finally acknowledge the path that had brought him there, and the woman who had sacrificed everything to pave the way. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. I had spent months preparing, saving every spare dollar, working extra hours despite increasing pain in my hands and knees. I purchased a new dress, navy blue, with a modest neckline and matching low heels. I had my hair professionally styled for the first time in years. I even splurged on a manicure to hide my work-roughened hands. The bus ride to the university took 4 hours. I clutched a small gift box on my lap the entire way. Inside was my father's pocket watch, the only thing of value I had to give Marcus. It had been my grandfather's before that passed down through generations. Along with the watch was a card containing a check, nearly my entire savings meant to help Marcus as he transitioned to his residency. I arrived at the campus early, following signs to the grand auditorium where the ceremony would take place. As instructed, I found my assigned seat in Section E near the back of the hall. I was disappointed by the distance from the stage, but told myself it didn't matter. I would still witness my son's crowning achievement. An hour before the ceremony, as other families began filling the auditorium, I spotted Marcus in the lobby. He was surrounded by a group of well-dressed people, Vivian Montgomery at the center. She was resplendent in a designer suit, diamonds glinting at her ears and throat. Beside her stood a distinguished-looking man I assumed was her husband and their son, Tyler. My heart pounding, I approached the group. "Marcus," I called softly. He turned, his expression freezing momentarily before he composed himself. Ellen, he said, not Mom. Never Mom in this context. You made it. Of course I did, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Vivian's gaze swept over me, taking in my department store dress and sensible shoes. You must be Marcus's neighbor, she said smoothly. How kind of you to come all this way. Marcus didn't correct her. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably. The ceremony will be starting soon. I should join the other graduates. Could I get a quick photo first? I asked, pulling out my outdated phone. There's really no time, he said quickly. There will be professional photographers after the ceremony. And with that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of black-robed graduates, leaving me standing awkwardly beside people who had no idea who I really was. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotions. Despite everything, tears of pride streamed down my face as Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma and ceremonial hood. Dr. Marcus Thompson. My son. My heart. The culmination of 30 years of love and sacrifice. When the ceremony concluded, families gathered in the reception hall for refreshments and photos. I made my way through the crowd gift box clutched in my hand, searching for Marcus. I finally spotted him surrounded by classmates Vivian and her husband standing proudly beside him. I approached hesitantly, waiting for a break in conversation. When Marcus finally noticed me, he gave a tight nod of acknowledgement, but didn't invite me into the circle. I stood on the periphery, invisible as a photographer approached to take group photos. Let's get one of this graduate with his family, the photographer suggested. This was it. The moment Marcus would have to acknowledge me. Instead, he put his arm around Vivian and smiled broadly. This is my mom, he announced to his friends, his voice carrying clearly to where I stood. The woman responsible for who I am today. Vivian beamed, squeezing his waist possessively. We couldn't be prouder, she said, her husband nodding in agreement. The photographer snapped several photos while Marcus's classmates offered congratulations to Vivian on raising such a brilliant doctor. All the while I stood frozen, the gift box heavy in my hands, completely erased from my own son's life. A gray-haired man in a professor's robes approached me. Excuse me, he said kindly. Are you Mrs. Thompson? I recognize you from County General. I was a patient last year. You were my night nurse. I nodded numbly, unable to find my voice. He looked between me and Marcus, confusion evident in his expression. I thought, isn't Dr. Thompson your son? Before I could respond, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The room seemed to tilt, voices becoming distant and echoey. The pain in my chest that I'd been ignoring for months intensified, radiating down my left arm. Ma'am, are you all right? The professor asked, concern replacing confusion. I wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. The son I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for had just denied my very existence, had replaced me with a woman who had given him nothing but social connections and the veneer of wealth. I need some air, I managed to whisper. I made my way outside, each step requiring tremendous effort. I didn't confront Marcus. I didn't create a scene. I simply left the gift box still clutched in my hand, 30 years of motherhood dismissed in a single devastating moment. The bus ride home was a journey through fog. I sat staring out the window, seeing nothing of the passing landscape, feeling nothing but a hollow ache where my heart should be. My body moved on autopilot. Exit the bus walk 3 blocks to my apartment building, climb 2 flights of stairs, unlock the door. Once inside, the full weight of what had happened finally descended. I collapsed onto the sofa, still in my carefully chosen graduation outfit, and broke apart. The sobs came from somewhere primal, tearing through my chest with physical force. I cried until I had no tears left, until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. When the phone rang, I couldn't bring myself to answer it. It rang again an hour later, and again after that. Finally, I checked the caller ID. Not Marcus, as some small part of me had hoped, but Patricia from the hospital, wondering why I hadn't shown up for my shift. "I'm sick," I told her, which wasn't entirely a lie. "I need a few days." "Ellen, you've never called out in 10 years, Patricia said, concern evident in her voice. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted, my voice breaking. "But I will be." After hanging up, I wandered through my small apartment like a ghost. Every surface held memories of Marcus. His kindergarten art projects carefully preserved on the refrigerator, his high school graduation photo on the mantel, his childhood teddy bear still sitting on the shelf in what had once been his room. The physical artifacts of motherhood surrounded me, mocking what I now understood to be a one-sided devotion. I didn't sleep that night or the next. When I did finally drift off from sheer exhaustion, my dreams were filled with Marcus's voice. "This is my mom, the woman responsible for who I am today." Each time I woke, gasping, the pain in my chest more insistent. By the third day, calls from concerned coworkers had multiplied. My friend Barbara, a respiratory therapist I'd known for 20 years, showed up at my door with soup and a determined expression. "You're scaring people, Ellen," she said, taking in my disheveled appearance and the untouched food in my kitchen. "Talk to me. What happened at the graduation?" The story poured out of me in halting sentences, each word like glass in my throat. Barbara listened without interruption, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. "After everything you've done for that boy," she finally said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Working yourself to the bone, putting your own health at risk. How dare he?" Her indignation was like a mirror reflecting back the injustice of the situation and helping me see it clearly for the first time. This wasn't just heartbreaking. It was wrong. "I need to figure out what to do now," I said quietly. "First, you need to see a doctor," Barbara insisted. "You're pale as a ghost, and you keep rubbing your chest. How long have you been having pain?" I tried to deflect, but Barbara was having none of it. She drove me to the clinic herself, waiting while the doctor examined me and ordered tests. The preliminary results were concerning enough that he wanted me admitted to the hospital for further evaluation, but I refused. I couldn't afford a hospital stay, not financially and not emotionally. "At least take a week off work," the doctor instructed. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high, and those EKG changes worry me. I'm prescribing medication, but you need rest, Ellen. Real rest." Rest. The concept seemed foreign after years of working around the clock. But as I sat at my kitchen table that evening, sorting through a pile of mail I'd been ignoring, I realized rest wasn't an option I could afford. The stack contained multiple medical school tuition bills. Bills I was still paying off, having taken loans in my name to supplement what Marcus's student loans didn't cover. There were credit card statements showing thousands in debt accumulated buying Marcus the things he needed to fit in with his wealthy classmates. My own medical bills from postponed care that had become urgent. The mortgage refinance paperwork for the loan I'd taken against my small apartment to fund Marcus's education. The next morning, I made an appointment with a financial advisor at my credit union. The meeting was brief and sobering. "Ms. Thompson," he said, reviewing my documents with a furrowed brow, "your financial situation is extremely precarious. You're carrying unsustainable debt, your retirement account has been nearly depleted, and your income, even with 3 jobs, isn't sufficient to meet these obligations long term." "What are my options?" I asked, feeling strangely calm in the face of this additional crisis. "Bankruptcy might be one, though it won't eliminate the student loan debt. Selling your apartment and downsizing dramatically would be another. But truthfully, at your age with these health concerns, continuing to work multiple jobs isn't sustainable. Is there any possibility of family support? Perhaps your son, now that he'll be earning a doctor's salary as a resident? I nearly laughed at the suggestion, but the sound that escaped was closer to a sob. That afternoon, as I was making tea with shaking hands, my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Perhaps he was calling to apologize, to explain. "Mom," he said, when I answered the first time he'd called me that in over a year. "I was hoping to talk to you about something." "Yes," I said, hating the eagerness in my voice. "Vivian and her family are taking a group of us graduates to their villa in Tuscany for a month before residencies start. It's an amazing networking opportunity, but I need to cover some expenses. Could you transfer about $5,000 to my account?" $5,000. Money I didn't have, couldn't borrow, couldn't manifest, no matter how many extra shifts I worked. Money he was asking for not to further his education or cover necessities, but for a luxury vacation with the woman he had chosen to call Mom, while erasing me from his life. Something broke inside me then. Or perhaps it finally healed. A clarity I hadn't felt in years washed over me. "No, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "I can't do that." "What?" He sounded genuinely shocked, as if the possibility of refusal had never occurred to him. "But Mom, this is important for my career. Vivian says—" "I don't care what Vivian says," I interrupted. "I've given you everything I have, Marcus. Everything. And at your graduation, you acted like I was a stranger. You introduced another woman as your mother." A pause. "You don't understand the social dynamics at play," he began defensively. "Vivian has connections that can make or break my career. Sometimes you have to play the game to get ahead." "Is that what I am to you now? A game, a social liability?" "That's not what I meant." He backpedaled. "It's complicated. Look, can you send the money or not?" "Not," I said firmly. "Not only do I not have it, but I wouldn't send it if I did. It's time for you to stand on your own feet, Marcus, or have Vivian support you since she's apparently your mother now." I ended the call before he could respond, my hands trembling, but my resolve firm. For perhaps the first time since James died, I had put my own well-being ahead of Marcus's wants. It felt terrifying. It felt necessary. It felt right. As I sat with this new feeling, a plan began to form in my mind. The white coat ceremony, where new doctors received their first official physician's coats, was scheduled for the following month at the prestigious teaching hospital where Marcus would begin his residency. It was a major event attended by faculty, family, and important hospital donors, including undoubtedly Vivian Montgomery. I had spent decades silencing myself, making myself smaller, accepting disrespect and erasure for the sake of peace, for Marcus's sake, but I was done shrinking. If my son was ashamed of me, of my work-worn hands and modest clothes, of my working-class speech and simple education, that was his burden to bear, not mine. I would attend that ceremony, and this time I would not stand silently in the shadows. This time, I would claim my rightful place as the woman who had truly made Dr. Marcus Thompson possible. The James Monroe University Hospital gleamed in the morning sunlight, its modern glass facade reflecting the clear blue sky. I stood outside longer than necessary, gathering my courage, repeating the mantra I'd adopted over the past month. I deserve to be here. I have earned this moment. I looked different than I had at graduation. After decades of putting everyone else first, I had finally taken some steps for myself. I'd used a small portion of my tax refund for a proper haircut and color that took 10 years off my appearance. I'd visited a department store makeup counter where a kind young woman had shown me how to brighten my tired complexion. My outfit was still modest, a tailored blue dress from a consignment shop, but it fit well and made me feel more confident. The white coat ceremony was being held in the hospital's grand atrium. As I approached the entrance, I spotted Marcus immediately standing in a cluster of new residents, all in dark suits, awaiting the white coats that would mark their official transition to physicians. Beside him, predictably, stood Vivian Montgomery, elegant as ever, in a cream-colored designer ensemble, her husband and son flanking her like royal attendants. I took a deep breath and walked directly toward them, no longer willing to hover uncertainly on the periphery of my own son's life. Marcus saw me coming. His eyes widened in alarm, darting between me and Vivian. "Ellen," he said, as I reached the group, his voice tight. "I didn't expect you." "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "I wouldn't miss this important day." Vivian turned her practiced smile, faltering slightly as she recognized me. "Oh, you're the friend from graduation. How nice of you to come support Marcus again." Before Marcus could respond, she placed a proprietary hand on his arm and continued. "We've been so busy helping him prepare for residency. As his family, we want to make sure he has everything he needs to succeed." "His family," I repeated, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "That's interesting, because I don't recall seeing you at his high school graduation, or his college graduation, or at the hospital when he broke his arm at 12, or sitting up with him all night when he had pneumonia at 16. Marcus stepped forward, his expression panicked. "Ellen, please." "No, Marcus," I said firmly. "I've been silent too long." I turned to address the small crowd that had gathered, including several of Marcus's fellow residents and what appeared to be hospital administrators. "My name is Ellen Thompson. I am Marcus's mother, his only mother. I raised him alone after his father died when he was 5. I worked 3 jobs, night shifts at County General, weekends at Mercy Urgent Care and medical transcription during what should have been my sleeping hours, to put him through undergraduate and medical school." Vivian's face had lost its polished veneer, her mouth thinning into a hard line. She tried to interrupt, but I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I have arthritis in both hands from years of lifting patients and typing medical records. I've postponed my own medical care to pay his tuition. I remortgaged my home to cover his expenses. I did all this gladly because I believed in him and his dream." I turned to face Marcus directly. "At your graduation, you introduced this woman as your mother, the person responsible for who you are today. You erased me completely, as if 30 years of sacrifice and love meant nothing." Marcus's face had drained of color. Around us, his colleagues were exchanging uncomfortable glances. From the corner of my eye, I saw the professor who had recognized me at graduation. He was watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. "Now I'm not here to create a scene," I continued more softly. "I'm here because despite everything, I'm still proud of what you've accomplished. But I will no longer be invisible. I will no longer be dismissed." I reached into my purse and withdrew the baby book I'd kept meticulously throughout Marcus's childhood, along with a small box of mementos. His first tooth, a lock of hair from his first haircut, the tiny hospital bracelet from the day he was born. "These belong to you," I said, placing them in his hands. "As does this." I handed him an envelope containing the final tuition bill stamped, "Paid in full," in red ink. "I've satisfied every financial obligation related to your education. My responsibility as your mother is complete. From now on, you're on your own financially, just as you've chosen to be on your own in every other way." Vivian stepped forward, her composure recovered. "I think you've said quite enough," she hissed. "You're embarrassing Marcus on an important day." I met her gaze steadily. "No, Mrs. Montgomery. He embarrassed himself when he denied the truth of where he came from, when he became ashamed of the woman who gave him everything." With that, I turned to leave my head high despite the tears threatening to spill. I had said what needed saying. I had reclaimed my dignity. "Ellen, wait!" Marcus called, desperation in his voice. He caught up to me in the corridor away from the watching crowd. Please, you don't understand. I had to make connections fit in with the right people. My career depends on it. No, I corrected him gently. Your career depends on your skills as a doctor, your compassion for patients, your dedication to healing. All things I thought I taught you. Just keep this quiet, he pleaded. We can talk later, work something out. But right now, with Vivian's family donating a new wing to the hospital, it's complicated. I looked at my son, this stranger in an expensive suit who bore my features but none of my values, and felt a curious mixture of love and disappointment. It's actually very simple, Marcus. The truth usually is. I am your mother. I love you. I always will. But I will never again allow you or anyone else to make me feel ashamed of who I am or what I've done for you. As I walked away, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting Marcus, but instead found myself face to face with the professor from graduation. Mrs. Thompson, he said, slightly out of breath. I'm Dr. Harriet Chen, Chief of Medicine, and I think you and I should have a conversation. The hospital cafeteria was quiet at that hour, most of the white coat ceremony attendees still gathered in the atrium. Dr. Chen placed a cup of coffee in front of me and took the seat opposite. That was quite a moment back there, she said, her expression unreadable. Not many people would have the courage to speak their truth so publicly. I felt a flash of embarrassment. I didn't intend to create a scene. I just couldn't be invisible anymore. No apology necessary, she assured me. In fact, quite the opposite. I've been watching your son during his rotation interviews. He's talented, no question, but there was always something that concerned me. A certain entitlement, a lack of authenticity. Now I understand why. She sipped her coffee, studying me thoughtfully. You said you work at County General Night Shift Nursing. I nodded. For over 20 years, plus weekends at Mercy Urgent Care and freelance medical transcription. 3 jobs at your age, she said, shaking her head. That can't be sustainable, especially with the arthritis you mentioned. It's not, I admitted, but until recently I didn't see any alternative. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Thompson? Ellen, please. Ellen, I don't know if you're aware, but our hospital has a scholarship program for medical staff seeking advanced education. Nurses, especially those with your level of experience who wish to become nurse practitioners or pursue other advanced degrees. I blinked in surprise. I wasn't aware, but I'm 65. Surely that's too old to go back to school. Dr. Chen's laugh was warm and genuine. I completed my second specialization at 62. Age is just a number in medicine. Experience counts for far more. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. If you're interested, call my office. I think you'd be an excellent candidate. As she rose to leave, she added, You know, I grew up in circumstances not unlike what you described. My mother cleaned houses to put me through college. When I applied to medical school, I was told by a well-meaning advisor to downplay my background to try to fit in with the predominantly wealthy student body. Did you? I asked. For about 5 minutes, she replied with a smile. Until I realized that my background wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was my strength. It gave me perspective, empathy, and work ethic that many of my peers lacked. She paused, her expression softening. Your son will figure that out eventually. The question is whether you'll still be there when he does. After Dr. Chen left, I sat holding her card, my mind racing with possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider in decades. Could I actually return to school, pursue the advanced degree I'd always secretly wanted, create a new chapter for myself beyond the identity of Marcus's self-sacrificing mother? For the first time since the graduation betrayal, I felt something like hope flickering in my chest. The next few weeks were transformative. I reduced my work schedule, taking Dr. Chen's advice to prioritize my health. I met with a different financial advisor who helped me create a sustainable budget now that I was no longer supporting Marcus. I made an appointment with a cardiologist to address the chest pain I'd been ignoring. Most significantly, I began the application process for the hospital's scholarship program, gathering transcripts from my nursing education, updating my resume, writing the required essays about my goals and experiences. Each step was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Marcus called several times after the white coat ceremony. I let his calls go to voicemail at first, needing space to process my emotions and establish my new boundaries. When I finally did speak with him, his tone was different. Less entitled, more uncertain. "I've been thinking about what you said," he admitted. "About where I came from. About everything you did for me." "I'm glad," I replied, careful to keep my voice neutral. "Some of the attending physicians have been treating me differently since they found out about you. One of them told me her mother was a housekeeper who worked double shifts to put her through college. She said she brings her mother to every important event, introduces her with pride." "That sounds like a woman who understands gratitude." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I want to apologize, Mom. Not just for the graduation, but for everything. For being ashamed when I should have been proud. For letting people like Vivian convince me that backgrounds like ours are something to overcome rather than honor." His words were a balm to my wounded heart, but I remained cautious. "Apology accepted, Marcus, but understanding needs to be followed by changed behavior. Trust takes time to rebuild." "I know," he said softly. "I'd like to try if you'll let me." Over the next months, Marcus began making small efforts to reconnect. Texts checking on my health offers to help with household repairs when he had time off, genuine questions about my life and work. I responded with cautious warmth, protecting my heart while leaving the door open for reconciliation. Meanwhile, my own life was blooming in unexpected ways. I received the scholarship to begin coursework toward becoming a nurse practitioner, taking evening classes 2 nights a week. I joined a support group for parents of estranged adult children, finding comfort and wisdom in shared experiences. I began mentoring younger single mothers at the hospital, sharing practical advice about balancing parenting with career advancement. By the time my 66th birthday arrived, I hardly recognized my life from a year earlier. My health had improved with reduced work hours and proper medical care. My small apartment, once a shrine to Marcus's achievements, now reflected my own evolving interests. Nursing textbooks, sharing space with novels I finally had time to read, walls decorated with art I'd selected purely because it brought me joy. Barbara organized a small celebration at her home, inviting friends from the hospital and my support group. To my surprise, Marcus asked if he could attend. "Of course," I told him. "But it's just a casual gathering, nothing fancy." "That's perfect," he replied. "I've had enough fancy to last a lifetime." When he arrived, he was dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, no designer labels visible. He brought a thoughtful gift, a ergonomic home office chair to use while studying, and mingled comfortably with my friends, many of whom regarded him warily at first. As the evening progressed, I watched him from across the room, noting the changes in him. The polished veneer he'd adopted during medical school had faded, replaced by something more authentic. He laughed more freely, listened more attentively. When Barbara mentioned my scholarship and new educational path, his face lit up with genuine pride. "My mom always wanted to advance her education," he told the group. "She put those dreams on hold to raise me and put me through school. I can't think of anyone who deserves this opportunity more." Later, as guests were leaving, Marcus helped clean up an echo of our old Sunday dinner routine. "I received a package from Vivian last week," he said, casually rinsing a plate. "All my belongings from their house, along with a note saying their continued support was contingent upon my clarifying family misunderstandings." "And what did you do?" I asked. I donated the clothes and things they'd given me to a medical student relief fund, he replied. And I wrote back thanking them for their past hospitality, but explaining that I wouldn't be requiring their support going forward. He placed the dish in the drying rack and turned to face me. I've been doing a lot of thinking about who I want to be as a doctor, as a person, about the values that really matter in life. He paused, his expression serious. You were right, Mom. My career depends on my skills and compassion, not on social connections. I'd lost sight of that. It's easy to get lost sometimes, I said gently. The important thing is finding your way back to your true self. Marcus nodded. I'm trying. It's harder without the Montgomery fast track, but it's more authentic. More mine. He hesitated. I know things can't go back to how they were between us. Too much has happened. But I hope we can build something new. Something better, actually. As I looked at my son, still learning, still growing, but finding his way back to the values I'd tried to instill, I felt the last hard edges of resentment beginning to soften. I'd like that, I said, one day at a time. 1 year later, I stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the cap on my head. At 67, I was about to walk across a stage to receive my advanced practice nursing degree. My joints still ached on rainy days, but the arthritis medication had made a tremendous difference, as had the reduced workload and improved self-care. The past year had been one of the most challenging and rewarding of my life. Returning to school after decades away had been terrifying. But the skills I'd developed as a working mother, time management, perseverance, problem-solving, served me well in my studies. Dr. Chen had become both mentor and friend, guiding me through the program and already discussing possibilities for my future role at the hospital. My relationship with Marcus had evolved into something I wouldn't have recognized 2 years earlier. Gone was the entitled young man ashamed of his origins, replaced by a more grounded physician who had earned the respect of colleagues through skill and dedication rather than social connections. We spoke weekly, had dinner monthly, and while we occasionally stumbled over painful memories, we were building a new foundation based on mutual respect rather than codependency. Marcus had reached out to Vivian once more, hoping for some form of reconciliation, but her response made clear that her interest had always been transactional rather than genuine. Her rejection had been painful for him, but ultimately clarifying. As I prepared to leave for the ceremony, my phone chimed with a text from Marcus. Good luck today, Mom. Can't wait to cheer for you. Bringing signs. I smiled at the thought of my son, now a second-year resident, sitting in an audience waving congratulatory signs for his mother. How far we had both come. The graduation ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. When my name was called, Ellen Thompson Advanced Practice Nursing with Honors, I heard a distinctive cheer from the audience. Marcus was on his feet as promised, holding a handmade sign reading, "That's my mom." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. At the reception afterward, Marcus introduced me proudly to several of his colleagues who had come to support me. This is my mother, Ellen Thompson, he said, his voice carrying the reverence the words deserved. She's the reason I became a doctor, and now she's going to be the best nurse practitioner this hospital has ever seen. Later that evening, as we shared a celebratory dinner, Marcus raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings and second chances, he said. And to my mother, the woman who truly is responsible for who I am today. As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. The path had been longer and more painful than I could have imagined, but the destination was sweeter for the struggle. My life at 67 looked nothing like I had expected. Instead of fading into a quiet retirement, watching from the sidelines as my son built his career, I was embarking on an exciting new professional chapter of my own. Instead of a relationship where I gave everything and received little in return, Marcus and I were building a healthier connection based on mutual support and genuine appreciation. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my voice and my value. I had learned that being a good mother doesn't mean erasing yourself, that love without boundaries isn't really love at all, and that it's never too late to rewrite your story. If you've ever felt unseen despite your sacrifices, if you've given everything only to be taken for granted, know that your worth isn't determined by others' recognition. The courage to stand up for yourself, to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes, can transform not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Have you had to reclaim your value in a relationship? What helped you find your voice? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and renewal. Share with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth today. Thank you for witnessing my story and being part of this healing community.